Good morning. Hey, guess what morning it is? Tuesday morning transformation, and we were in part 2 of the 6-part series from You're More Powerful Than You Think, and that's the system of healed. Right? Last week we talked about honoring God within yourself, coming from a spiritual reference point. I'm really excited about today because today will really give you a transformation, and this comes from the first E of healed: exercise loving yourself and others. And the theme today is living in love. So when Jesus was hanging out with the apostles, one of them said, what are the greatest commandments? He said there's 2 greatest commandments. Number 1, love God. What's that mean? Hey, that comes from honoring God within yourself, right? We got to love the source we're created from. We're a piece of God. We're a spiritual being. So when we love God, we love the bigger picture, which means we can love the smaller picture, which is us, because we're part of something bigger. What's the second one? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Wow. What's that mean? See, so many people think about love thy neighbor, but is that the most important part? As thyself, right? So how can we love our neighbor if we don't love ourselves first? And this is the huge transformation. Now, when I was writing this chapter, Exercise Loving Yourself and Others, 2 questions came to me. I believe they were divinely downloaded. The first one was, if I were to ask you, do you love yourself? What would you say? Probably, of course, because I asked myself that question as I'm sure, man, I think I'm great, right? I love myself. And then the second part 2, second question, was do you love yourself like God loves you? That was like, boom, oh my God, is that a whole nother level? Well, once I asked myself that question, it took me 8 months. How many months? 8 months to write about 35 pages, right? So the transformation that I had to go through in almost a year really changed my life, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. What would it be like to actually live feeling that we loved ourselves as God loved us? How would you see the world? What would every day be like? What would you feel in your body? What would you do? Would you do things and feel differently than you do today? What relationships would you create? So for love to matter, what's that mean? Create matter. Feelings have matter. When you're a spiritual being, you're creating things in the physical world. We create matter. Emotions have matter. That's why when something's really bothering you, you say, man, this is really weighing me down. Do you think about the words that we use? Because emotions are energy and creates matter. So for love to matter in your life, we have to have consciousness of that within ourselves. Well, how do we get there? First, it's understanding our reference point. Where do we start? Because when we're kids, we seek validation from other people. We look to get love from our parents, from acceptance from our teachers, from our friends, from coaches, from pastors, right? We have all these people that we put in high esteem that we seek validation from. And that's a weak system. Why? Because we're seeking our own identity based on someone else. Do they really know how to love themselves like God loves us? Do they love us unconditionally? So now we learn these conditions of love. And then we're also raised with comparison and competition, right? Who's the kid that gets the best grades? Who's the kid that's the most popular? Who's the one that has friends? Who has the most friends, right? Who's the great athlete? Or, who's the prettiest? Or who's this? Or who's that? And then we end up comparing. Well, the problem is competition, there's a winner and a loser. Well, one day we could be the winner, but I assure you one day you will be the loser. And so what happens, that whole system sets us up for an outside-in reference point of giving and receiving love and creating an identity based on something outside of us. That's why step 1 is honoring God within yourself. And so we grow up with this, and then what do? We grow up with judgment, right? And judgment creates pain. Judgment creates criticism. Now here's the problem with judgment. It says that if we judge, we will be judged. Well, what happens when we judge? Well, number 1, when we judge, we set up this grading system. Meaning if I judge or criticize someone else, then that means there's like some grading system that you're either above or below. That means I'm above or below. So when we judge or we criticize, we set this scale that now we have to live by. That means we got to live in perfection. We got to do everything right, otherwise we end up criticizing ourselves. Number 2, the second thing that happens with judgment and criticism, we create separation. Hey, if you're this, right or wrong, good or bad, or whatever it is, then that means we create separation from each other. When you do that enough times, repetitive separation leads to loneliness from the inside out. See, a person could be married and sleeping with their partner every night, or in a family, surrounded by, you can be in a group of 1,000 people, yet you could be lonely. Right? Loneliness is an emotional condition. Being by yourself is a physical condition. A person could be by themselves, yet in total joy and fulfilled. Yet you could be sleeping next to a partner and feel completely lonely. That's an emotional condition. Why? Because it's continual conditioning on separation. The third thing that happens with judgment and criticism is that we experience whatever we give. So every time I criticize, then I'm experiencing the criticism. And so what's that mean? Not only do I create separation and judgment and pain, but I feel the pain. So every time we criticize, what we're really doing is we're saying that something we really don't accept in ourselves. And so that criticism creates feeling. We condition ourselves like that, and we drive ourselves into this condition of lower self-esteem, when really that doesn't exist at all. So how do we solve this? How do we go from fear and pain into love? Well, number one is gratitude, but the second thing, and most importantly, it's the principle of unity. It's a universal law, meaning we are all children of God. We're all spiritual beings. And feeling unity and connection with people, regardless of how they dress, regardless of how they speak, regardless of their mood, it's just another person, spiritual being in a physical body, going through the physical world on their own unique soul path. So there's a difference between criticizing or judging the differences in people. In the principle of unity, we honor the differences in people because they're on their own unique soul path, right? So we don't look at how they dress or what they say or how they are. They're a spiritual being that's coming in for a specific reason. They're on their own soul path, and we honor that soul path. And so that means when you look at people, you see them as another spiritual being on their own soul path. See, because everybody has different gifts, we have a different reason why we're here. So when you honor your gifts, then you respect the gifts in others because their gifts are different. Hey, you know what? I got maybe 2 gifts, okay? So far, I have 2 sole purposes. Number one is a chiropractor, right? So I know I'm a healer. I know I'm a world-class chiropractor. You know, I've done the work, right? The second thing is I'm here teaching about love. I know my purpose is being a spiritual teacher. Guess what? I can't change my oil. I go to Jiffy Lube. I don't know how to frame a house. I'm not MacGyver around the house. I still have my toilet paper roll in the master bedroom has been busted for a week. I still haven't fixed that. But I'm here teaching the difference between separation and unity. I know what my purpose is, right? And every time I get reminded, can we fix the toilet paper roll? You know, it's like, okay, you know what? I'll do it this weekend. Oops, the weekend. We had more fun than I don't want to sit home and fix the toilet paper roll. I want to go out and have fun and go by the beach, right? So the difference is we know who we are and we can honor that. And another person the gifts and write a check for somebody to fix stuff around the house. You know what I mean? So it's all good. So when you have unity, when you walk around and you realize the innate in you is the same innate in other people, and you look in their eyes and you unconditionally love their spiritual being, then what do you feel inside? All of a sudden you are in love. So how do we exercise that? Because it's all about exercising love. Because when we give it, that's what we experience, and we replenish ourselves. See, giving love isn't self-sacrifice. It's actually self-replenishing. As you give it, you're conscious of that giving, you experience it, and you replenish yourself. So there's a chapter in the book called Seeing Through the Eyes of God. Imagine if we went through the day when your eyes, not your anatomical eyes, but your spiritual eyes, saw the world and people as God sees it. And I would just be totally fascinated by the water, by these plants, by the fact that I'm sitting here in a beautiful morning. I'd be in total gratitude. By these people that are walking by, and this girl's doing these martial arts drills over here, you know, kicking. Ouch, that looks like it hurts. But hey, she's got a reason. You know what I mean? And so I'd say, wow, that's cool that they're out here doing stuff, and it's each person on their own soul path, and I'm fascinated to know what their path is. I'm fascinated to respect what their gifts are. And so when we see through the eyes of God, then we live at a different level. We live at a different consciousness. What would that be like? Not only to have conscious moments of that, but if you saw that in every person, if you saw that in the eyes of the Starbucks barista, you know, if you saw that in the eyes of the person that's flashing your little ID card at the gym, if you saw that in the cashier in the grocery store or the dry cleaner, if wherever you go, you saw God in every person, because it's the same God that's in you, your life would be different. Your relationship with yourself would be different. Your relationship with others would be different. In fact, every relationship in your life would go to a new level, and you'll be amazed at what you would attract. One last thing, we look at Martin Luther King and Gandhi. That was their message. They had a message of unity to abolish racism. And look at the heights they went to. Look at the millions of people they attracted with their message. If we can see and exercise love by seeing through the eyes of God, everything in our life will raise to a whole new level. Take that. I'd like you to share it, because every person that you know, I believe, needs this message. Even if they don't need it, they want to be reminded. Bring it back to their mind. And with this, if we can exercise this for the next week, next week we go into forgiveness. Wow, that's going to be a massive change, game changer on how to release our past. So let's love this week, and we'll see you next week.